that we be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek, that we be part of the love you give.
Good morning, and welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to worship together in community online at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Abhi Janamanchi. My pronouns are he, him, one of the ministers serving this religious community. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are joining us from, whatever your beliefs, gender identity and expression, immigration status, political affiliation, or life circumstance, we welcome you to worship this morning. This religious community is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we have figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right or we've arrived. We come here to learn more about being in community and in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, how to create trust and compassion in one another, and how to serve a life larger than our own. I extend a special welcome to those joining us for the first time today. If you're comfortable doing so, please let us know in the live chat where you're joining us from and your name. And if you're new or feel new, you're invited to complete the newcomer form that will be linked there. We also hope you will join us at the virtual coffee hour that will follow the service. Please look for the Zoom link in the chat at the end of the service. Our pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. They are available today in the chat to support you. Also, please mark your calendars for the annual Kiplinger Lecture with Dr. John King, former Secretary of Education in the Obama administration, this Wednesday, August 26th at 7 p.m. Also on Thursday, we will have a virtual meet and greet with Dana Edwards, our intern minister, who is taking on the additional responsibilities of leading our religious education and family ministry program. This will be on Thursday at 7 p.m. Please check the e-news for the Zoom link. Our guest speaker today is my dear friend, colleague, and mentor, the Reverend Dr. Bill Sinkford, who serves as the senior minister of First Unitarian Church in Portland, Oregon. Bill was the first African American to serve as president of the Unitarian Universalist Association from 2001 to 2009, and later as interim co-president from April to June 2017. His tenure as UUA President was marked by strong public witness for social justice and support for marginalized communities, commitments he continues in Portland. Recently, in response to violent encounters in Portland between federal law enforcement sent in by the Trump administration and protesters supporting the movement for Black Lives, First Unitarian joined a federal lawsuit alleging that the presence of the federal agents has chilled the congregation's lawful right and spiritual call to protest. This is but one example of the prophetic ministry that the Reverend Sinkford is engaged in. So friends, it is a delight and a privilege to have Reverend Sinkford join us this morning. I now invite you to say hello to your neighbors in the chat. Our opening words come to us from the Reverend Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards, and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and your power to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this community. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Dana Edwards, and my pronouns are she and hers. And I'm your intern minister here at Cedar Lane. And today I'm lighting our chalice in Bowie, Maryland. And as I read our chalice lighting words, I invite you to share where you're lighting your chalice in the chat. We light this flame for the sacred art of unknowing, humbled by all that we cannot fathom in this time. We come into the presence of what we do know, perhaps the only thing we can ever know, that love is now and forever the only answer to everything and everyone in every moment. Today, I want to tell you the story of one of my personal heroes, Malala Yousafzai. And I thought, what better way to tell her story than in her own words? So I'm going to share a book, a children's book that she wrote that tells her story in a way that you can truly see and hear her own humility, her own sense of humbleness as she tries to change the world. Malala's Magic Pen. Do you believe in magic? When I was younger, I used to watch a TV show about a boy who had a magic pencil. If he was hungry, he drew a bowl of curry and it appeared. If he and his friends were in danger, he drew a police officer. The boy was a little hero, always protecting people who needed help. How I wanted a magic pencil too. If I had a magic pencil, I would use it to put a lock on my door so my brothers couldn't bother me, stop time so I could sleep an extra hour every morning, and erase the smell of the trash dump near our house. And I would use it to make other people happy. I would draw the most beautiful dresses in the world for my mother, the best buildings in the valley for my father so that he could open as many schools where children would study for free, a proper ball so my brothers and I would no longer have to play with old socks stuffed with rubbish. Every night before I went to bed, I wished for that magic pencil of my own. And every morning I would wake up and check my cupboard, but the magic pencil was never there. One day, I was throwing away potato peels and eggshells in the dump. I was wrinkling my nose, swatting away flies, and making sure I didn't step on anything dirty in my nice shoes, when I saw a girl about my age sorting trash into piles. Nearby, boys were fishing for metal scraps using magnets on string. When my father returned home from work, I told him what I'd seen. It made him sad. "Abba," I said. "Yes, Johnny," he said back. I always liked it when he called me dear one. "Why haven't I seen that girl in my class?" "Because," he said. But he didn't finish right away. "Because, Johnny, in our country, not everyone sends their daughters to school. and some children must work to support their families. Those boys will sell the metal scraps they find. If they went to school, their families would go hungry. School was my favorite place, but I had never considered myself lucky to be able to go. My father had always said, Malala will live free as a bird. Now I wondered how free I would truly be. That night I thought about families who didn't have enough food, and the girl who couldn't go to school, and even about how when I was older, I would be expected to cook and clean for my brothers, because where I came from, many girls weren't allowed to become what they dreamed of. I knew that if I had a magic pencil, I would use it to draw a better world, a peaceful world. First, I would erase war, poverty, and hunger, and then I would draw girls and boys together as equals. Over the next few years, instead of wishing for a magic pencil every night, I worked hard in school every day. I wanted to be one of the top students in my class. But soon, powerful and dangerous men declared that girls were forbidden from attending school. They walked the streets of our city now. They carried weapons. One girl stopped coming to school. Abba, where are all the students? They don't feel safe here anymore, Johnny. How could a few men stop all the girls in our valley from going to school? If more people knew what was happening to us, I thought, they might help. Wishing wasn't enough. Someone needed to speak out. Why not me? I wrote about what it felt like to be scared to walk to school and how some of my friends had moved away because of the threat they faced in our city. I wrote about how much I loved school and how proud I was of my uniform. Once I started writing, I didn't stop. I wrote speeches and I traveled around my country sharing my story. I even talked to a reporter from a famous international newspaper. People actually wanted to learn about my life. I spoke for all the girls in my valley who couldn't speak for themselves. My voice became so powerful that the dangerous men tried to silence me. But they failed. And now my voice is louder than ever, louder because people have joined me, and together we make a chorus standing up for what we believe. We raise our voices for those in need, help people in danger, even if they are an ocean away. Think of the world as a family. Do you still believe in magic? I do. I wrote alone in my room, but people all over the world were reading my story. Millions now know it, and it helped me spread my message of hope. I had at last found the magic I was looking for in my words and in my work. I am Malala. I have always wished I could make the world a more peaceful place. And every day I work to make my wish come true. One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. One child, one book, one teacher, one pen can change the world. What a simple, humble, but profound and poignant message. I wonder what your magic pen will do.
Thank you, Dana, for sharing this inspiring and powerful story about Malala Yousafzai. Each Sunday, we give and receive an offering to support the premise, promise, and practice of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Our offering is a visible symbol of our commitment and our covenant to our faith, to our religious community, to each other, and to our world. It reminds us that our congregation belongs to us, to each of us individually, as well as the whole of us. Our offering is a weekly embodiment of the idea that a group working together for justice and love is more exponentially powerful than any one individual. Today, we share the plate with Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, UUSJ. UUSJ, working in the National Capital Region, amplifies UU values and voices from across the nation by bringing critical social justice issues to the attention of federal policymakers. UUSJ's priority issues include defending our democracy, racial justice, economic justice, climate justice, and immigration reform. Currently, UUSJ is working with the Unitarian Universalist Association, congregations, and partner organizations like the James Reeb Project at All Souls Unitarian in DC to register voters, offer resources for reflection on justice issues, and encourage robust participation in the 2020 elections. Let's hear more about this effort from UUSJ Reeb Project organizer, Kelsey Cowger.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Cowger, and I'm the voting campaigns organizer for UUSJ and the Reeb Project at All Souls. I've so loved getting to know people at Cedar Lane doing this work, and I'm thrilled for the opportunities we have to make a difference in this election together. We've already done some pretty wonderful things. With some of the other UUSJ churches in the area, we've written close to 30,000 postcards to voters who are experiencing voter suppression, helping make sure that they can vote in November. And we're on track to do another 50,000 before the election. Within the broader UUA, we helped make 114,000 calls to voters in Texas during General Assembly ahead of a special election there. And we also participated in national phone and text bank efforts for National Vote by Mail Day, which overall reached 54,000 voters by phone and 3.6 million voters by text. We've built new organizations to do electoral projects, and we've helped support existing organizations in 14 different congregations across the DMV, really magnifying the amount of work that we could do alone. Now, as the election gets closer, we're going to need your help more than ever. We're starting a new round of postcards to voters at the end of August, and we would love to have your help writing those cards and buying stamps for the project, which also supports the USPS, by the way. This Sunday from 2 to 5, we're doing a large text bank with our partner CASA in Pennsylvania to help register new voters and to help existing voters vote by mail. We'll follow that up with a phone bank in several weeks to talk to voters that we may have missed. We'll also be working hard to register voters in Virginia throughout the month of September with phone and text banks. And we'll be calling voters in North Carolina every Thursday night to encourage them to get out the vote. There are all kinds of ways to get involved. So please sign up for more information if you want to help us with this important work. And don't forget, after November, the work isn't done. We still have to hold our new leaders accountable, and UUSJ will be playing an important role in helping that get done. Thank you so much for your energy, for your hard work, and for caring about the important goal of making sure every registered voter has access to safely and securely use their voice in this election.
Thank you, Kelsey, for your inspiring words and charging us to be engaged in this work. Friends at Cedar Lane, Nancy Wilkinson, Tana Ray, Molly Houck, and Dana Edwards are spearheading the UU the Vote effort. They have ordered over 2,000 postcards for us to send to voters in North Carolina. So please be on the lookout for more information about it in the e-news that will come out this Friday. UUSJ also has a member match underway, Anyone who gives today can be added as UUSJ members if you wish. While the UUSJ membership is $60, you are welcome to give $60 or more or less or whatever you are able by electronic means, by text, online giving, PayPal, QR code, or by mailing a check to the church at 9601 Cedar Lane, Bethesda, Maryland. Thank you all for your generosity and support. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Day is breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Day is breaking in my soul. They are sowing seeds of gladness. They are sowing seeds of gladness. They are sowing seeds of gladness. Day is breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Day is breaking in my soul. They are in the fields of plowing. They are in the fields of plowing. They are in the fields of plowing. Day is breaking in my soul.
Thank you, Jenny Lynn and Rachel, for that beautiful rendition of Bright Morning Stars. In the words of the Reverend Lynn Unger, through the work of our hands and the work of our lives, our love is made real. May we be grateful for the many ways we come together to make love real at Cedar Lane and in the world. Let us pause for a few moments now in the midst of our religious community that connects us across walls, across computer and phone screens, across space and time. In this sanctuary of caring and sharing, we hold in our hearts those for whom parenting is a primary spiritual practice, those who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of a loss, those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, those with mental illness or addictions, those who have suffered abuse or injustice, those who have experienced job loss or face financial insecurity. Let us hold them all in our thoughts and in our prayers. Within our Cedar Lane community, we hold in our hearts and send healing wishes to Donna Firer's nephew, Paul, who was recently diagnosed and has begun treatment for leukemia at Northwestern Medical Center in Chicago. Glennis Belay's daughter, Leslie, who lives in Madison, Wisconsin, has COVID-19. We hold Glennis and Leslie in our hearts and send healing wishes for a speedy recovery to Leslie. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by violence and calamities and the COVID-19 pandemic in our nation and in our world that to date has claimed the lives of over 170,000 people in our country. We hold in our hearts this week the Iowa communities devastated by Monday's storm, including members of the People's UU Church in Cedar Rapids, who have been without power, gas, and many without food for a week. Holding them, holding all the joys and sorrows we bring and hold in our hearts, let us come together now in prayer, meditation, or reflection. Would you pray with me? Nameless one of many names, thou who is ultimately beyond our thoughts and yet ultimately within our hearts. We bring to this time and place our cares and concerns and offer our blessings with the full knowledge of their frailty and their strength. We reflect upon the stirrings of our hearts, thankful for the love we receive, glad for the love we may offer. May we thoughtfully attend to whatever deep yearnings we feel there. And may we know the grace and strength that grows as a broken heart is mended. We reflect upon the words of our mouths, grateful for whatever wisdom may come our way, glad for the kind words of others. May we strive to speak our words with compassion and caring, and may we know the humility and courage to admit where we have fallen short, where we have missed the mark. We reflect upon the effects of our deeds, grateful for the opportunities to be of help to another. May we seek to add our portion of justice and equity to our world around us. May we know the blessing of living justly, loving kindly, and walking humbly along our ways. We reflect upon the wonder of our lives and all life, thankful for the miracle of drawing breath, glad for the astonishment of being. May we pause every now and then to reflect on this, to express our gratitude. May we give our hearts, our mouths, and our deeds evermore in service to the life in which we live, move, breathe, and have our deepest being. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the silence of these moments, those who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of a loss of a loved one are invited to rise or share their names in the chat in mourning and in memory. Let us enter the silence together.
Blessed are the poor in spirit by Brian Doyle. I heard that for the first time as a child, of course at Mass, late in the morning, drowsing between my alpine dad and my willowy mom. In a pew filled with brothers seated with parental buffers so as to reduce the fisticuffery, and like everyone else, I was puzzled and nonplussed. Wasn't the whole point to be rich in spirit? How could you be bereft spirit-wise, but get a backstage pass to the kingdom of heaven? What was that all about? Was that a major, serious printer's error that no one had noticed all these years? Was it supposed to be poor in spirit or something artsy like that? Diligent school teachers subsequently explained it to me, and my gentle, wise parents explained it, and learned university professors explained it, and able, scholarly writers explained it. And I got the general idea that the word poor there is better understood as humble. But humble never really registered for me because I was not humble. I had no real concept of humble until my spouse married me, which taught me a shocking amount about humility. And then we were graced by children, which taught me a stunning amount about humility. And then friends of mine began to wither and shrivel and die in all sorts of ways, including being roasted to death on September 11th. And I began to slowly, dimly realize that humble was the only finally, truly honest way to be in this life. Anything else is ultimately cocky, which is either foolish or a deliberate disguise you refuse to remove for complicated reasons, maybe not even you know.
Thank you for inviting me to share worship with you this morning. Humble never really registered for me, wrote Brian Doyle in our reading. It never really registered because I was not humble and had no real concept of humble. Humility was something that he had to learn, that he had to be taught by the living of life with his spouse and his children in this world, with its great cruelty and its great beauty. Yes, this world. Religion today faces a world not merely of transition, but of one revolutionary crisis following another with almost unbelievable rapidity: political breakdown, economic injustice, continental shifting of power almost stun the mind. The world can get our attention these days. But I'm not quoting one of the progressive pundits of our own era. That was written by Universalist Clarence Skinner in the early 20th century. Skinner called our religious ancestors from concern only with God's love and their personal salvation to the work of building beloved community. The social gospel is called. Skinner was a primary voice calling universalism to the concerns of this world, not just the world to come. A world of revolutionary crisis. I'm quoting from Skinner's last book, published in 1945. One revolutionary crisis following another. He could really be writing about our own time. But that was 1945. The Second World War was ending, but the devastation it left was massive. And among its casualties was the confidence of liberal religious folks that progress was inevitable. Because just below the victory celebration was the knowledge that Western culture had managed to fail once again. There was commitment to create a new world order, but also a knowing that humans were capable of the Holocaust and that atomic weapons had changed forever the calculus of war. Beloved community was not, at least inevitably, right around the corner. From Skinner again. The crisis of our age, which is one of the most acute in the whole history of human life, might well be described as a sudden demand for greatness for which the world is unprepared. A demand for greatness. He railed against what he called the sinful partialisms of his age. Nationalism versus world consciousness, capitalism versus communism, authoritarianism versus democracy. These win-lose battles of good versus evil could not hold the universal truths that Skinner perceived. Skinner called for universalism as the only approach that could hold what he called the unities and universals. Now, of course, it was Skinner and the universalists of his day who believed that they got to name what those unities and universals were. I often mention the privilege of the Unitarians, but the Universalists as well thought they had a monopoly on religious truth, that they were the masters of the theological universe. Humility is a rich and important theological theme because humility, well, it brings us down to earth. The words humility and human both derive from the root word for earth. To be humble, writes Reverend Margaret Allen, is to be grounded. C.S. Lewis said that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. Humility asks us to know that we are part of creation, not masters of the universe. When my son was 7 or 8, some 30 years ago now, he became obsessed with the line of action figures called Masters of the Universe. Some of you may remember these 7-inch plastic action figures, Dolls is what they were. The hero was He-Man. That's right, He-Man. His real name was Adam, and he was a prince in this magical world. With his sword and the saying of magical words, Prince Adam transformed into He-Man, the strongest human in the universe, the force for good, so that he could battle Skeletor, the personification of evil. The battles were epic, they were violent, and never-ending, allowing the writers to introduce one after another evil scheme from Skeletor and an equal number of victories for He-Man. It was awful. And it was big business with a weekly TV show, comic books, of course, fan clubs, and merchandise of all kinds. The imagery? Well, let's see. First, Adam. I remember that name from somewhere. Adam, Adama, the first human in the Western religious story. Adam, in He-Man, is blonde, white, needless to say, and impressively muscled, even before his transformation into He-Man. In fact, his body didn't seem to change at all in the transformation, but he added an iron cross on his chest, and his skin tone deepened just a bit, began to look almost Semitic. And Skeletor, with the face of a skeleton, seemed a personification of death as well as evil. This was Christian allegory, Jesus and life versus Satan and death. Other superheroes have become popular since those days, but a new Masters of the Universe animated film is actually in production today. So if you missed it the first time around, you still have a chance to see it. I resisted bringing those figures into our house. The violence and the gender and racial stereotyping were so unforgiving. And the theology, though I didn't talk about it in those terms back then, was so problematic. I tried to talk with my son about how he did not have to see the world through that simplistic frame of good versus evil. Everything did not need to be a battle. Violence should be the last response, not the first. Now, I did not tell him to move through the world without his guard up, but I tried to let him know that living was not just about being on guard. I resisted, but I eventually also gave in, and our house became He-Man Central. Life as a battle between good and evil resonates not just through the Abrahamic faiths. Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer, are major deities in Hinduism. Think of the yin and the yang of the Tao. Religions from time out of mind have used images of that battle between good and evil to describe our world and our lives. What is our view of the world and how it works? That big picture, that 30,000-foot view. Reverend Daniel Cantor, in his book, Faith for the Unbeliever, writes, traditionally, a worldview can take one of three stances. The universe is essentially evil, indifferent, or life-giving. Those who see the world as essentially evil rely on force in responding to it. This is the view of the world that the Masters of the Universe and far too much current political rhetoric embraces. Good versus evil, force is required. It's win-lose all the way. The second possibility is to see the universe as essentially indifferent. This is the secular, the scientific, the non-religious view. And the danger here is the difficulty in finding purpose in our lives. If there's no value one way or the other, if the world is truly indifferent to us and how we live, then how do we choose? The third possibility is to see the world as essentially life-giving and nourishing, filled with responsibility, but also with grace. This option encourages belief that a purpose exists, and it implies a responsibility to carry that purpose out. The Universalists were reclaiming this possibility with their God of love and the social gospel that called faith into action. The world as evil, indifferent, or life-giving. I don't think we hold one of these views all the time. Different life experiences can call out different responses in us, and we can move from one to another and back, but I don't think we move often. Most of us have a dominant understanding or a dominant assumption, a default view of this world and how we are called to move in it. We develop this view, this default view, over time and through practice. We learn responses to the world that seem to work for us, whether they work well in truth or not, and our responses become habit. It was martial artist and sometime philosopher Bruce Lee who said, "Under duress, when the chips are down, we do not rise to our aspirations, we fall to the level of our training." We default to what we know. Our strategies and our views of the world and how it works have been forged by hundreds of years of winner take all, with domination of the planet and its people as the goal. Our default mindset has been forged from the experience of colonization, of slavery, of capitalism as religion, and corporation as demigod. I'm quoting Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. It should be no surprise that humility is a spiritual challenge for us. We default to our habits, even when those habits have proven destructive over and over in the past. We fall to the level of our training. That Masters of the Universe model in the affluent communities of the West, it worked for quite a while. It was possible to sustain the illusion of control and the illusion that we were creating ways of living together on the earth that could justify hope. Hope that our communities might, in the not too distant future, actually become life-affirming and nourishing to the bodies and the spirits of us all. I call that an illusion because we see how fragile that hope has proven, how many were excluded, how easily it has been reversed, and how little we are truly in control. The coronavirus is just the most recent example. But things may be getting bad enough, the threats to our very existence real enough, the failures of our past fixes impossible to ignore enough, that some of us, perhaps many of us, possibly even most of us, are open to a new way, a new view of how the world works and how it might work, a new commitment to practices that shift the paradigm. But here is where it gets hard, because it is not enough to add a humility prayer or a gratitude practice to lives that have been informed for generations by the good versus evil, winners and losers paradigm. That can help, but it's not enough. We need to engage in different practices long enough that they become the default, or at least long enough so that they become an option we know that we can choose. And that will call us to deal with things like those illusions of control. We'll need to do better than simply paper over them. James Baldwin wrote, "I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with their pain. We are not haters, most of us, but giving up the illusion of control is a source of fear for many of us. And it does not feel that this is just a fear of the unknown. I'm not sure that I can name it perfectly, but is it possible that many of us have invested so much energy in presenting ourselves as in control of our lives, when inside we have known how out of control life can feel? Perhaps we have pretended to be masters of our universe for so long that we are holding shame at bay about our inadequacy. What I know is that there is something that keeps us from stepping to the edge, letting our assumptions fall away, and looking at the universe with newly opened eyes. Words of the Reverend Angela Herrera, adapted only slightly. You bring yourself before the sacred, before the holy, before what is ultimate and bigger than your lone life, bigger than your worries, bigger than your money problems, bigger than the fight you had with your sister and your aches and pains. You stand at the edge of mystery, at the edge of the deep, with the light streaming at you, and you can't hide anything, not even from yourself. And you say, what is this? What am I looking at? What do I do? You think of all the generations who've come before you and cast words out toward the source of the light, wanting to name it. Somehow, the name stayed tethered to the aging world and got old, while the light remains timeless and burns without dimming. Meanwhile, the armful of worries you brought to the edge of the mystery have fluttered to your feet. Unobscured by these, you shine back, light emanating unto light. You, with your broken heart and your seeking, you are the utterance of the timeless word. The name of the holy is pronounced through your being. I believe we need to step to the edge, to look into the deep, and to discover what it is that we fear. I believe that we need to find the skill or the courage or the desperate necessity to stop seeing the world through those long practiced lenses of good versus evil, of win versus lose. The goal of control and illusion of our power have simply not served us well. I believe we need to companion one another as we move to the edge and look together into the deep and discover together the light streaming toward us and the hope within us. That is the Universalist promise, that we are all children of the light, that light that shines toward us even when we refuse to recognize it. We will need to deal with the pain, with all of the harm that we have done to one another and to the earth. We cannot avoid the pain, but we can and we must change our habits and our view of the world. We are not masters of the universe. Humility is thinking of yourself less and leaving room for love to hold you and help you, leaving room for love to light your path, leaving room for love to point the way through the pain toward the life-giving hope that is ours to claim. May that be so, and amen.
every woman in the world had a mind set on freedom. Every woman in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace. If every woman in every nation, young and old, each generation, held her hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every man in the world had his mind set on freedom, if every man in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace, if every man in every nation, young and old, each generation, held his hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every nation in the world set a true course for freedom, if every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, if all of our sons and all our daughters reached for friendship across the waters, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war. There would be no more war.
Thank you, Bill, for reminding us the need to develop the courage to step to the edge and look into the deep, discovering what it is that we fear, and looking together to discover that light that streams towards us and the hope that exists within us, and for the humility and to think of ourselves less, leaving room, spaciousness for love. Thank you. Before we close, I'd like to thank all who helped make today's service possible. My dear friend, the Reverend Dr. Bill Sinkford, for his inspiring message, Dana Edwards, Kelsey Cowger, Dr. Jasmine Lee, Jenny Lynn Moyer, Rachel Moore, Kevin Miller, Travis Plager, and First Unitarian Church Portland member, jazz pianist, and composer Daryl Grant, who you will hear in the postlude. And a thank you to members of our amazing AV team, Don Woodruff, Michael McCrickard, Todd Chernikoff, Michael Morse, Barbara Thompson, and Rebecca Nucktree for those beautiful in-gathering slides. And thank you to our membership and pastoral volunteers who have been active in the live chat today. We'd love for you to join us and to stay in touch. I hope you will join us at virtual coffee hour. And once we're all in the room, the host will assign us to a random breakout group so that we can have small group, intimate social conversations. Look forward to seeing you there. May you be well. May you be happy. Be blessed.
Spirit of life and of love, great mystery at the heart of things. Dear God, as we search for ways to help humility have a place in our hearts, will you pray with me in the words of Reverend Harry Meserve? From arrogance, pompousness, and from thinking ourselves more important than we are, may we finally be liberated. From making war and calling it peace, special privilege and calling it justice, indifference and calling it tolerance, pollution and calling it progress, may we be cured. For telling ourselves and others that evil is inevitable while good is impossible, may we be corrected. Great Spirit, we know that we are called to do only three things: love justice, be merciful, walk humbly. Help us to be about those tasks and to be willing to approach the edge of the mystery and to discover ourselves welcomed there. May that be so, and amen.
There is no uncertainty about the suffering around us.
Nor uncertainty that the worst is still days ahead for us.
The possible futures we face never included an absence of suffering.
But the possibilities for how we move through this time are many.
And it is in the choices that we make that glimpses of hope can be found.
One possibility
is that we will accept these evils
as the best that we can do.
But that is not the only possibility. There is another.
There is another.
There is another.
There is another.
The possibility that love might just prove to be real.
And prove to be resilient.
And stronger in the end
than our self-interests and our failings.
This time, the circle can't be broken. The time is now at last. We can rise by sharing what we have, prioritizing connection, imagining new possibilities, and standing for justice. We can choose compassion, honor those whom we have lost, expand community, and rebuild trust in one another. We can love bigger. It's already happening. The seeds of this new direction are being planted all around us. Now is our time. Rise up, brand new day.